as part of the COCAC project, the cost action, we have developed this Train the Trainer webinar. And we want to encourage dialogue about career and career concept. And we're all going to explain this as we move ahead. So I will just start changing the slides, and then I will invite my co-presenter to say a little bit more and reveal where you are, Tristram, in all of these small pictures. You're there.
I am here. Don't worry, you're not alone.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself and us and the writing of the book?
Yes, so I'm Tristram Hooley. I'm Professor of Career Education at the University of Derby, and Ria very kindly invited me to work with her on the sort of translation and some rethinking that she did on a book which she'd previously published in Danish. So we worked together, and this is us on some steps in Poland where we were giving some other presentations and things. So but just after the book had been published.
Thank you, Tristram. And I am Ria Thomsen. I'm with the University of Aarhus in Copenhagen, also the University of Southeastern Norway and University of Lower Silesia in Poland. So I have a lot of international collaborations. It is, as Tristram say, that I was invited to write a book in Danish because the Danish University, the Aarhus University Press, do a series called Reflections. And the aim of this small book series, here's the book in English, it is actually to engage the public in thinking about theoretical concepts, and all of them are written by researchers at Aarhus University. And then when I first published that, I realized that it was also a good foundation for a dialogue with people who do not think about career on a daily basis, as many of us, I suppose, do, because we work in different professional roles with careers. We can either work as researchers or educators or career professionals. So I was invited to speak about the career concept. And then when Tristram and we wrote the English edition of the book.
Said, fuck off.
Okay, hang on.
And so
Sorry, someone turned their sound on. Okay, so as part of the COCAC, we also want to have dialogue with the wider public. And since I had experienced how that works with the basis of the book, we have developed this Train the Trainer workshop to encourage all of you, if you have possibilities, to engage in such dialogues. So the aim of this workshop, which we will present in a couple of slides, is to engage the wider public in dialogue and practical exercises around the career concept. And the activities are designed to encourage a more, you can say, sophisticated but also emancipated way of thinking about career. I have tried the workshop in Denmark with different types of employees in medical industry, with medical doctors, and also union members in financial, many different kind of groups. And it is based on the Careers book, and the book can be read prior to the workshop, but it doesn't have to at all. It also works without reading the book prior to the workshop. And during the workshop, participants will be encouraged to think along the concepts involving thinking about their own career in the ways that is suggested in the slides. We've had some good responses to both the book and also to the workshop, that it actually do help, especially people from outside the fields of career, to think about careers in other ways than they are used to, or maybe even encouraged to in their organizations where they work, and also in wider life. Over to you, Tristram.
Yeah, so this is part of a project that we're both involved in with lots of other people, including probably many others on this call, which is called Critical Perspectives on Career and Career Guidance. And we've shortened it to COCAG, which is not the most elegant of shortenings, but there you go. And this has been funded by the European Union. And one of its aims is to involve citizens in meaningful discussions about how different conceptualizations of career impact on their working lives. So what we're trying to do, this is a sort of scientific project. We're talking to other researchers. We also want to talk to just people from the general public, to governments, but then also to all of these institutions that sit in between. So trade unions, public employment services, careers services, work insurance funds, all of these sorts of things. So this is what we're trying to do, is to take some of these debates that are there in the theoretical discussions around the nature of career, and we're trying to bring them forward to people so that we have the opportunity to discuss them in different ways. So this is what the workshop is going to cover. So we start with the question of what is a career, and then we think about how we can map our career development, what role coincidences play in career, and are our careers more than just paid work? And then we finish by asking, do we career alone? So these are meant to be sort of quite straightforward questions that people might have thought about themselves, but perhaps they haven't had the opportunity to think about that with some new information. That's what we're hoping to provide. So back to you.
So the workshop structure, which will start after the next slide, is that it consists of a PowerPoint presentation, and it will take about 45 minutes to 1 hour to deliver. It includes 5 small reflection exercises. So participants will actually need a pen and a paper to do these exercises during the workshop. They're really short and they are individual exercises. So the workshop can also be delivered online. And then you can take some minutes for questions, either along the way or in the end. That is up to you. And as I said before, the reflections book can be read prior to the workshop. It is now even also available as audiobook, both of them free, and you can purchase printed copies of the book from the Aarhus University Press at a cheap price. And for some of the workshops that I have done in Denmark, the organizers has given the book out to the participants as part of the workshop, because it's really cheaply available to them. So this is where the workshop starts, and we are going to do it as close to the way it is presented as possible. We have 1.5 hours for the Train the Trainer webinar, so that should give us some time to deliver the workshop, and we encourage you to do the exercises along with us. We may not give as much time for the exercises as we would do in the normal workshop, but just so that you can get a feeling of how it works and what is in there. And afterwards, as part of the workshop, you can give some feedback, but also after we finish the workshop, we would like to get your feedback and discuss how this can be used for engaging the wider public in thinking about careers.
Okay, so This is the start of the workshop. And we should say you are very welcome to have these slides. We will put them on the blog for the COCAG blog, so you can download them and use them and adapt them. So we would start it by inviting people to think that they are reimagining careers. We'll point out that there is a book that accompanies it for those that want it, and that it's developed based on this book. We would like, if you do use our slides, we'd like you to include this, because this is kind of how we've been funded to do this work, is through the European Union, the COST network. So if you could just sort of flag to people that this is where it comes from, and explain to them about our project, that would be great. And then we would like to move on. And we would talk a bit about why we developed this workshop. So the idea is that it fits with this bigger project, which is really looking deeply at this concept of career, which I guess the thing that I would probably say here is that most people, I mean, everybody knows the word career or whatever's the equivalent in your language, but people often have lots of different assumptions and ideas about what it actually means. And so what we're going to try and do in this workshop is not necessarily just give people one definition, but really to get them thinking deeply about what this concept means, both in terms of how other people have understood it, but also in what it means to them. And so it's kind of personal, as well as you know, there's some learning about theories and so on that will go on. And as we've said before, what we're trying to do in this is to help people, help institutions, help society to think about how to use this term career to make people's lives better rather than worse, really. So that's the objective here. So as we said, it's going to be sort of structured around a series of questions. What is career? How can we map our career development? What role do coincidences play? Are our careers more than just paid work? And do we career alone? So let's start with this conventional conception. Ria, how would you understand this sort of conventional idea about career?
Looking at the conventional idea of career, we're going back to the etymological origin of the word, which is something like race course. Carraria is the Latin word. And also it can mean carus or chariot, which is wheeled, vessel, wagon. And what that word sort of, I don't even know if this is a word in English, connotate? No?
Yes.
Okay. Is that it's something with speed, and you are moving ahead, moving forward. And that also explains what, at least in Denmark, and I think also in a few other countries, is what we can call like an everyday understanding, which has to do with competition, that not everyone can join. Someone is ahead of others and someone is faster. So career here is moving forward at a certain page. And to sort of really illustrate the differences between at least two different understandings of careers, we've chosen the picture of a race course, and also the picture of two people looking at a map. And the last picture, two people looking at a map, is to illustrate another understanding of career, which many of you are familiar with, because that's the understanding that is in many career theories and method, and that is that of a journey. So career is a journey through life, often with others, and in which coincidences and relationships and experiences play a role, and also play a role in our direction of travel. And we can sum this difference between the two different understandings that we see here. We can sum that up in saying we can pause a journey to take part in a race, but we can't stop racing to go on a journey. And my experience with putting these two different understandings of career up for people who have not thought that you can think of career in different ways is that it's quite effectful in sort of encouraging people to open up their mind in the way towards the way that they think about career. And yes.
No, it's just someone new coming in. Carry on.
Yes. So in this slide, we then sum up the two different understandings that we have introduced so far. So the everyday understanding of career will be career as a vertical concept. People may associate it with a career ladder and competition, and that career is just for some, those who are making a career. And then we propose a more critical understanding of career, which is career as a more horizontal concept that describes a journey through life, learning, and work. It also include cooperating with other people along the way, and everyone has a career because everyone is on a journey through life, learning, and work. And then this is the first exercise that we encourage people to do, and that is to draw your career development on as a timeline. Remember that the line can go up, down, to the side, jump, leave gaps, become dotted, or everything else that makes sense to you, and you can use all type of characters. When I get to this point in the workshop, I also let people know that what you draw on your map is not something that you will have to show to other people. You may want to speak about it, but the paper is for you only. And then I leave some minutes in silence for them to draw. And we have suggested 4 minutes. It can be a little less. For most people, it's quite easy to draw something and they get quite focused on doing it. And sitting together in silence, doing this also is quite powerful. So we will give you a minute to draw your career development as a line.
Okay. Now it's nice to leave people a little more time. If you've got a lot more time, you might even want to allow people to talk after that. So this is you can run this activity how you see fit. But after we've got people to start to draw their career as a timeline, we might introduce a few career concepts to them. And in the book, we get into a lot more. We introduce lots of things. But in this one, we're going to introduce the idea of horizon, a horizon for action. And the essential idea here is that you can only imagine and plan for what you can see. And so there are a couple of sort of theorists, sociologists, Hodgkinson and Sparks. They developed something they called careership theory, and it's got lots of interesting ideas in it, actually, not just this idea of horizon for action, but we've just pulled this idea of horizon for action out. So what horizons for action say is you have a horizon for what is possible, and possibilities then are lost behind the horizon as we grow up. We often can't imagine things. I mean, when you're a child, you perhaps can think of, you might want to be a dragon or a wizard or whatever, but as you grow up, you start to only be able to see the things that are around you. And that's a problem for some people, because depending on where you stand, you will be able to see more or less. You'll be able to see more or less opportunities. And so what we try and think is, well, how can we help people to see further? And career development activities are a way to help people to see further. And so if we think about the horizon, if you climb up a ladder, or if you climb up onto a mountain, you can see further. So what we want you to do now is to look back at your timeline and think about a moment in your life when your horizons for action were limited by what you knew or what you could see around you. And there may be more than one place. So it may be that perhaps when you're at school, you'd never heard of the job that you're currently doing. That would be an example of a horizon for action. But equally, it may be that now in your life, you can't imagine doing anything other than what you do because you're so sort of fixed in that idea. So think about where there are some horizons for action have been important in your career. So let's give you again a little bit of time to think about that.
So the next career concept that we introduce in the workshop is Stanford professor John Krumbolt's happenstance learning theory, in which he has the concept of planned happenstance. And that's a concept that he invents to remind us that coincident, chance, and happenstance comes into play as our career journey develops. And also that unplanned events that happen to us, for us, with us, can be acknowledged and can be responded to creatively. So when Krumboldt introduced this theory, which was almost, I think, 30, 40 years ago, he wanted to acknowledge that choices may not be wrong, but may be the choices that were possible at that time, and that we can respond to new insights or coincidences that happens with curiosity and explore what is now possible in this new situation. He also wanted people to think about how they can put themselves in situation where coincidences can happen. And that will be something like join an activity that you don't really see the purpose of at the moment. For instance, at the college, to explore what is this about? And then you may meet people that become important in your career journey. So, and most people are really happy to do this next exercise, which is look at your timeline and mark a place where a coincidence that had an impact on what happened next in your career and or your life. That you find that coincidence and you mark it, and it may be something that happened to you. You met a person, you join a course that changed your way of thinking, or it can also be something that happened to one of your close relations and then impacted your career. And I want you to spot it, mark it, and write a brief note to yourself. What was this coincidence about? the next concept that we introduce is from critical psychology, and it's not an actual career concept. But given the fact that we have suggested that career is a journey through life, learning, and work, we also needed a concept that really acknowledges people's everyday conduct of life. So the activities that they participate in a holistic way in their life. And Holzkamp's concept of the conduct of everyday life is a concept that tells us that during a day, people participate in several life contexts, and also that these contexts all influence on work and career and the decisions that we make. And that sometimes, or maybe even often, because we take part in many different contexts of life during one day and even at the same time, this can make different and contradictory demands on us. And to give an example is that the person who has a family and needs to decide what time to leave the office. And maybe it is encouraged by the workplace to work late, to put in more hours, but it's really also needed to be present in the family, and the children may have something in the school that they need their parents' support for. So this is a contradiction that the person have to solve and is solving every day. And sometimes when you look at people and think that they make a decision that looks irrational, it may very well be that they made that decision positioned in another context of their life than the context you are in them with. It may be work, and that it's perfectly rational for them to make this decision. And the next exercise is about bringing those, thinking about all those different contexts into thinking about career also, and encourage people to think about that all areas of our life is also a part of our career and influences the decisions that we make. So now I would like to encourage you to look at your timeline and consider whether there was a time when you made a decision from another area of life that then played into your career, education, and job. And you will know what it was and what the decision was, and I would like you to mark it and again write a note for yourself. And we'll give you a couple of minutes to do so.
Just building on Ria's just talked about, we're going to introduce another career theory to you from an English theorist called Bill Law, and it's called community interaction theory. And he really focuses on the idea of career as a social process. So we live and work and build our lives alongside other people. Other people shape our lives, they give them meaning just as we shape theirs. And much career development also is collective rather than individual. And what Bill Law's work particularly looks at is how influences happen, who influences you and how influences happen. So he might particularly focus on things like your uncle giving you some feedback on something that you're good at. So somebody in your family perhaps says, well, you're really great at talking to people or working with children or looking after animals, and that might be the sort of thing that encourages you to think about particular careers. And you know, and equally, if somebody says you're bad at something or gives you negative feedback, that might be important. But you also sometimes can look at people, see people as role models. There's lots of different ways in which people might shape your lives, and of course, not only as influences, but also as partners and people you make decisions with. So you will often make decisions alongside your life partner, your children, your parents. These are all going to be people who might influence how your career goes. So what we want you to do now is, again, go back to your timeline and think about who has been important to your career and where on this timeline was the intervention of somebody really important on your career. And it can be for good or for bad reasons. It doesn't always have to be. I mean, sometimes it might be someone was an incredibly inspiring role model who gave you huge amounts of support. Other times it might be a kind of nasty teacher or boss who perhaps gave you something really negative. But the point is, other people have been important in your career. So let's mark a couple of people onto your timeline. Where have they been important and why have they been important? And then also you might want to think, where have you taken others into account? Where might you have decided perhaps I would have done something different, but I decided I didn't want to move my children from one school to another, or I didn't want to leave my parents. So you've probably taken decisions like that somewhere along your life. And so mark all of these, well, not all of them, but mark a couple of examples of these onto your timeline. So again, we're going to give you another couple of minutes here.
Before we move into what is the wrap up of the workshop, I think that what is also important to do when presenting the different concepts is to give good and perhaps many examples of what would this look like in your context and culture. And we're together in this Train the Trainer webinar from many different places in the world. And we also encourage that you amend the slides, maybe even add if you can see that there's something that can maybe work better as a concept that is important in your context and culture. But also when you present these career concepts, give a lot of examples, because it may be that we who work in careers in different roles, we are very used to this way of thinking. And sometimes it's quite obvious to us, but when speaking to someone who is not given the career concept and maybe even their own career development or career journey much thought, this is new, and they need examples to sort of unpack this theoretical content. So we wrap up this workshop by stating that career or a career is not only about education and work, which it is for many people. They think about career in that way. We encourage people with this workshop to also think about career in relation to all areas of life, in relation to other people, in relation to coincidences, and also what they perceive as their horizon of opportunity and action, and how other people influence their career development. And what is also the purpose of doing so is to open up, of course, in thinking, but also in action, and give people the sense that they can influence their own lives and the lives of others, and help them move closer to what they define as the good life for them. And that career guidance can support people to think about and act on their career. And for the last dot here, it may be good if you, before you deliver the workshop, know what possibilities for career guidance people have in your context. Is there a free public service that they can access? Can they access maybe through their workplace, or if they are a member of a union, or through the organization where they work? Or is it something that they can access by paying for it? It's good to have an idea, because many people may not have an idea on how career guidance is available to them.
And I think where people will have ended up at the end of the workshop is with this piece of paper with probably lots of scribbles and scrawls on it, which will be some kind of representation of their career, their life journey so far. And what we will have encouraged them to do by taking them through these different sort of theoretical ideas is to reflect on that life journey, but also to recognize that the things that have happened to them are not just sort of entirely personal, but they're also things that have happened to many other people before. And in fact, even writers have written about and noticed. So, you know, for example, bad luck or good luck being an important part of your career is not something that is unusual, that you might feel, well, you know, I was just very lucky or very unlucky at that point. But in fact, it's something that is experienced by pretty much everybody. And so what we're trying to do with this is to try and help people to get a deeper level of understanding about what's going on in their own life. So I think depending on how much time you've got in the workshop, you might encourage people to reflect on that. You might want them to talk to the people next to them, people around them. But we've got this particular exercise way of doing it, which is to do it, which we'll ask you to do now, which is to use a Padlet. And so you should be able to scan this Padlet with a phone or something, and then add some comments. I've also added the URL there if you want to do it that way. So have a go at that again. I'm going to just check and see if I can get it to work for me there. So what we're asking people then to do in this Padlet is to think about what they would take away from it. They might want to give us some other feedback, and then we'll get them discussing in groups potentially. That working for people? Seem to be having a bit of trouble getting it going, but that may be because of less than ideal Wi-Fi.
It says Padlet is open, not sure how to add to it. There should be a little plus if you scroll down, and if you click that, a page open up where you can add. Got it, thanks. You're welcome. Going to give you a couple of minutes to add to it. And there will be also opportunities to discuss this workshop once we have delivered the last slides. So this is a part of the workshop that you deliver. And as Tristram said, you can now also let people reflect individually, discuss in triads, and share in the group, ask questions, comments, basically just have a dialogue about what they have heard and how they've worked and what it had meant to them. And I think that you are probably the experts of what works best in your context and culture. I have tried also a version where people discuss with the person next to them just shortly after each of the exercises. And when I introduce that type of discussion, I always say to them that you start with a list, taking turns in listening to each other, so that everyone, or all people, get to say something about what they have noticed about their own drawings. And of course, you need to establish in the beginning that it's up to people what they want to share. So no one is obliged to share something that they don't feel comfortable sharing with the other person. But my experience is that most people really like to say something because they do discover things during the workshop. We're keeping the Padlet open, so you can keep adding to it if you want. We're also keeping the Padlet open as a resource for you to use. So you can basically use this Padlet. Of course, then when people enter it, they will see what other people from maybe all over the world has thought about when they use the Padlet. So that is up to you, and feel free also to use it in your own language if you want. So we have included also a slide, of course, with the references that we have used in the workshop. And also, if people, for instance, in an organization think that they would like to share this, or they can make use of it in their daily work, they're also free to use the slides. So we have created this slide at the end to say that if they do, please make sure to include the slide that Tristram mentioned in the beginning, and this is the slide. Otherwise, you can add, amend, leave out as you see fit. And this is the end of the workshop. And what we would like now is to hear from you who signed up for this Train the Trainer webinar. Have you got any thoughts of how this may be useful to you in your context? Who do you think would be interested in leading such a workshop, and who would be interested in participating? Do you have any questions about the content or how to use the workshop? And please use the chat. I think we will also allow for some dialogue here once the workshop, once we've heard a little bit from people in the chat about these questions, then we will open up for dialogue.
I think just be aware that we are recording this, and we will put this on the COCAG YouTube account. So if you don't want your face or voice to be heard, then use the chat. But if you're happy for that, then feel free just to put your hand up, and we're happy to take questions as well orally. So yeah, any thoughts that people have now about, I mean, or reactions to this, any other ideas that we could incorporate into it? Yes, Ashwini, would you like to come in?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, this is I have gone through the book as well that you have written and the presentation today as well. I think one of the things that I wanted to sort of bring up was I'm from India, and a lot of time what happens is career decisions are not always autonomous. It is shaped by family, it is shaped by community, and I have often heard a lot of my so I'm doing PhD, so I have students as well. So the students that I interact with, them saying, and also even from my own personal life, I felt like the choice is taken out of our hands. So how would you go about like starting a discussion on that topic, and just generally like how do you approach like that power element there, because it's really strong in our sort of as a subjective experience.
Ria, would you like to react to that to start with?
Yes. Well, I think that the first step is for people to become aware that that is the situation, and also then to really see that it's a situation for many people. And then I would like to also ask a question back to you, because I'm curious if there are any sort of concepts that could be added to this presentation to support a meaningful reflection about what you have been sharing. Because I think it's really important what you're doing now to sort of adapt this and even amend it so that it fit different different cultures and different specific contexts and situations.
Yeah, I think it's something to think about. Definitely, I would like want to think about what concepts I can bring that sort of showcase the dynamic that is shared between like a young person and the family, right? Especially in the specific cultural context that I'm talking about. Yes, something to add, definitely.
I think one thing that I've thought about this is there's an assumption which is essentially a cultural Western assumption, and probably even narrower than that, that the right way to think about your career is as an individual, and that any attempts by family or community to shape your career are to be kind of resisted, or at least treated with skepticism. And I think there's, I mean, obviously there is a place for helping people to develop their own life vision. But I think in general, we one of the things we're trying to do in this workshop is not really lead people in one direction or the other, but to get them to reflect on how those things are working in their life. So yes, they're juggling lots of different roles. Yes, their family or their partner or their community are influencing them. We're not necessarily saying those things are good or bad. What we're trying to do is help people think about how those dynamics are working. So that's, I suppose, what we're doing. But I very much agree with Ria, is that if you find other concepts useful, and we've drawn out 4 concepts that we address in the book, there are others in the book. So, and hopefully they're helpful. But I think that the kind of basic structure of it can accommodate other more local theories as well. Right, I'm not going to get into there's a question in the, I'll take a couple from the chat and then we'll go to another question. So there's a question here about whether we talk about careers or career, and there's an endless amount of opinions on that. I think we tend to use career, but it's it's what's meaningful to you really, and I don't think we need to probably spend that much time arguing about terminology. But I think there's an interesting question here, which is basically how you adapt the group, how you would adapt the workshop for different groups. So early career staff is a suggestion here, but I wonder about, well, how would it be different if you were working with school students, for example, who perhaps have got less of a line to draw on, or with older workers and so on. So Ria, you've done it a few times. How would you adapt the workshop?
I haven't done it with younger students, so I haven't thought about how to adapt that. But I have done it with career staff, and basically that was a little bit more like this event, like a train the trainer, where we also discuss the content and how they can make use of it, and sometimes also how they get inspired to develop other types of activities based on these sort of small introductions to different career concepts. So what I try to do before delivering the workshop is to learn a little bit about what does, I don't even know if you can speak about a typical career, but maybe what is the idea of career for the people that I will be speaking to. For instance, in the financial sector, there is a strong idea about the successful career, and I try to bring in some examples, and also sometimes do, if it's a smaller group, do an introduction round where I can collect some examples that we then use in the workshop. But for instance, I have delivered this workshop in organizations that have a very strong idea and also a very strong hierarchy in terms of careers, and that's the financial sector, and it's also with medical doctors. And what it seems to give them is that the people in those organizations who considered they didn't have a career because they didn't move up in this maybe certain and expected page or maybe even picture, is that they see how they also have a career and how they can also maybe take some steps to influence so that their work life journey becomes more towards the way that they would like it. So what has been communicated to me by some of the participants is that they feel that career is more something that has happened to them because they've just taken the next step that was expected. And they found it really valuable to see their picture and to start thinking about then what would be a next step for them that they would like to do. And that doesn't mean that it's possible just because you can think it, but it means that you can maybe start working towards what you want if you're able to think about it in the way that you would like.
I'm going to take a question from Eleni here, and then perhaps we'll go back to Ghana's one, which is also very interesting. But so Eleni says, I think the way in which the macro level affects careers could be incorporated. And I think that's a very good point. I think we've touched on it a little bit, but we could definitely do that. So we could say, for example, we could use a theorist, perhaps like Ken Roberts or someone like that, who talks about opportunity structure, or one of the more sort of political theorists. And we could say, we could then ask people to reflect on where has a big global change or a big political or social or economic change made a difference to your career. So I think if I was thinking about me, I would think about how perhaps how the banking crisis might have made a difference to my career, and how you know some of my work became more difficult after that when we went into recession. Or I might even talk about something much smaller. So I worked on a particular way I got into career development. I worked on a particular set of work which was about career development with researchers in universities, and that was funded by the government. And if the government had never funded that, I wouldn't have had that job. I might not have worked in that. I may not be doing the work that I'm doing now. So I can think of quite a few things where big picture things have made a difference to my career, sometimes in a way that I couldn't see at the time, but looking back I can spot. And so that's something that I think we could definitely incorporate into it. I mean, obviously each time you do this, you've probably got choices to make about how long you've got. You could certainly stretch this kind of activity out for 2 hours, do a lot more discussion, do a lot more work, do a lot more reflection with people. You also potentially could combine it with some other kinds of workshops, which were perhaps little bit more directive. So around thinking about next steps or whatever. So that you've got choices to do. You can use it in different ways. Ria, I wonder whether you could pick up this one. So Fugana says, great to get some examples of what you're thinking about when you say mention your context or your culture. Can you give us an example? Perhaps give us an example of how you might do it in Denmark that might be different from how I would do it in the UK.
Yeah, I think actually that Iben has given a good example in the chat. So she acknowledges that the workshop is good, but given her context, which is early career researchers, and that her experience and also a fact is that they're under a lot of pressure because of short contracts and hefty competition for funds, she would like at the end of such a workshop to include a slide that encourages collectively critical thinking about working conditions, and maybe even some time allowing for participants to find out what kind of action they might take together as a response to what they have learned in the workshop. And I think that is a good example of someone adapting this workshop to their particular context and really thinking about what do people need from me as someone who is delivering a workshop that is opening up and reimagining careers and connecting it to the struggles that they face. I also think that the example given from India, also in the chat, is Aswini, who says that she's talking about purpose with her students. Why is career important to them? To bolster your finance, support your family's self-expression, continue the family line of work, and so on. So I think they are good examples of adapting to context and also culture. So a culture can be like maybe relating to the country, but it can also just be relating to the organization. So as I said before, some organizations have a very hierarchical, they have very hierarchical career programs, but even that type of organization I have experienced, it would like to learn about new ways of understanding career, because they're also facing difficulties in supporting their staff. So I think that this, we may see, I hope that we are witnessing a new sort of openness to learn that career can be understood in different ways. And also, when I delivered this workshop to an unemployment insurance fund in Denmark, it was because they wanted to also develop new career activities for their members. And that's how they found our network and me, because I was one of the persons who were thinking, or maybe I wasn't thinking about career in new ways, but I was communicating what is in our field and different types of thinkings from our field to sort of encourage new ways of thinking. I hope that may give an answer to what is meant by context and culture. Is there anything else in the chat? Or
yeah, there's a few things. I'll just pick out a couple more. So Fionn Uller, I think, it highlights the issue of illness. So like getting cancer. I mean, I think there could be all sorts of illnesses which might be even less serious than that. So, you know, perhaps getting an injury, you know, that stops you running, or, you know, there can be all sorts of things. And I think that very much would fit in, although it's not how people usually think about planned happenstance. If you think about what planned happenstance is really talking about, it's talking about unexpected events
Okay.
And they can be negative as well as positive. So somebody's got their microphone off again. But so when we're thinking about something like that, we might want to ask people about thinking about, I mean, illness that they've experienced, illness that other people have experienced. If we can give people some examples like this as we go through and explain the theories, I think it will really help them. But we want to be a little bit careful. We don't draw them only to thinking about one type of thing. But yeah, I think that's, you know, that's a very important thing that really does make a big difference. I mean, yeah, also things, you know, like having a family and so on can also be things that have similar sorts of impacts. I mean, there's lots of really helpful, positive comments here. I can't deal with all of them. A lot of people want to talk about this horizons for action. And I'm just going to give a thought here, and perhaps Ria can pick it up as well, is that one of the questions is, can people always see the limitations to their horizon? And of course we can't. Like, we can't see what we can't see. I think that's one of the reasons why we think we should talk about this. Is firstly, we should encourage people to reflect on their past and to recognize that they couldn't always see what was possible, and that when new information became available to them, that helped them to see something that they previously couldn't see. And I think that can be very useful to thinking about yourself now and thinking, well, probably it's the same now. That there may be a job out there that's perfect for me, but I just don't know about it, or I've never encountered it. And actually, so encouraging that sort of thinking, I think, is helpful. But the other thing that I think would be very helpful when we start to talk about horizons for action is doing some of this group work. And so getting people to talk to each other, to share experiences, because we often, well, if there are more of us, we've got more perspectives on what the limitations are. Yeah, Ria, would you add anything to that?
No, it's fine. I was just scratching my head.
Okay. Quite a few people are raising the systems theory framework of career development as being a really good tool. I mean, we in a sense, you could load any theories into it, any useful theoretical concepts that you think are helpful to getting people to think about their careers. We've tried to draw on some that we think connect with our interest in critical theory. You know, we're also big fans of system theory framework. The only thing I would say about system theory framework is, in a way, it does something similar to what we've done here in a different way, and that it encourages you to think about multiple different things. And so I think, you know, if you're working off of the timeline that we've sort of used as the basis of the exercise here, suddenly throwing lots of things all in one go can be quite difficult, really. So whereas I've seen some really great exercises people do with systems theory that do sort of similar types of things. We've got other people suggesting things like personal values, and yes, and so on. So again, all of this is useful. People who have only just joined late, will have a recording and we will publish it on the website. Any other questions that people either want to ask out loud or they want to put into the chat? Yes, the website, you've seen the website as the COCAG website. That's where we'll be putting the slides and the video ultimately. It might take a little while to just edit down. And then we will also, then if we go on to the next slide, you can contact us. We're both on LinkedIn if you want to get in touch and ask us anything about it. And yeah, we'd also encourage you to go to the publisher's website. You can download the book for free, and it was really written as an attempt to have some of these conversations that I think in the career development field we have all the time, and they're really interesting, and yet you go out and talk to people outside of the field and they always have a very much more limited sort of idea about what career is. And I think what Ria did in her book, and then we've tried to extend here, is to say, actually, there's a lot of different ways you can think about career, and actually thinking about it in all these different ways can be very, very helpful. So thank you, everybody. We almost certainly will run some things like this again. The COCAG network will be running lots of workshops. So if you're not involved in the COCAG network, then please feel free to sign up. You have to go online and sign up. One thing I'd warn you is if you're not a researcher, it asks you for things like what's your PhD in and that sort of thing. Just ignore that stuff and just sign up to the network. It's fine. We would really encourage practitioners to get involved, as well as people who are involved in research and so on. But thank you. Ria, do you want to give us some final words to finish us off?
I think it was great to have you here, and if you're not all out on your way out of the door, you started by letting us know where you were in the world. It would be good to know what group you think that you could use this with, if you plan to use it. So maybe just type that in the chat before you go. That would be interesting for us to know about. And thanks for all the good questions and comments. And yeah, I hope to see you for some of the other webinars.